Thank you. Thank you very much for coming to my session today. We're going to talk a little bit more about WES's journey of enterprise reinvention. If you had attended last year's GDN, myself and two of my colleagues, Cheryl Toto Kramer, our COO, and Biren Shaw, unfortunately couldn't be there in person, but we presented a little bit about our digital transformation that we're undergoing at WES. And so we're thrilled to have a chance to talk a little bit more about what we're doing and how it's going, and focus a little less on the technology that we did of the last time around, a little bit more about, kind of the why of what we were doing things, what we were trying to accomplish, some of the challenges that we have faced, and some of the lessons that we have learned. And we thought that that would really resonate with this audience. Just briefly, I am Holly Sanders. I'm the Chief Transformation Officer at World Education Services. This is a role that was created about 2 years ago, about a year and a half into our transformation process, and really looks to harness all of the different things that we're trying to do at WES, from operating model transformations to digital and technology transformations to looking at new ways that we are going to be working. So just briefly, we're going to go kind of through a bunch of different things today, a little bit around the forces that were driving us in these transformation efforts, very briefly on challenges, because I'm sure, as you all well know, a 50-year organization trying to do a change of our 20-year-old proprietary technology, we really didn't run into very many challenges at all. I'm sure all of you know that as well. Some key decisions that has enabled us to have effective management, why it was so important for us to focus on both on the people as well as the technology, and as I mentioned, some of the lessons learned. I would like to just briefly state, it's been just a pleasure to be here in person at GDN, and for anyone who is logging on virtually, I was on that side of things in the past, and I really appreciate the hybrid approach that GDN takes to enable people to be able to engage, and really hope that everyone has a chance to attend in person. It's been a really great few days getting to meet a lot of different individuals. So diving in case you didn't know, WES is celebrating its 50th year this year. We talked a little bit about it last year. We're about a week out from a celebration for our organization. We're all very excited about it. We are a nonprofit social enterprise, and we really focus in on everything to do with educational, economic, and social inclusion of immigrants, refugees, and international students. I mean, that is what really has rooted us from our beginnings, and it's where we kind of get our charter, our passion, and our missions to go forward. We have our vision, to be able to have everyone put their education, their experience, their skills to work anywhere in the world. We're really looking to be able to not only allow people to move and change and grow and go where they need to do, but also to thrive. And so we really want to partner as well with entities that will enable us to have that conversation at society recognizing the value of the people's education's experience. So I wanted to start with a little bit around the driving force, and I'm going to explain this a little bit. So we wanted to help ensure that WES remains competitive in a changing landscape. Now, I won't put a test for anyone who might have listened to our presentation last year, but one of the things we talked a little bit about was why we decided to do this transformation and the timing of why we were doing it. Partly, it was because of some forcing functions. We had COVID hit, and we went from a very manual process. We had people physically located, lots of people physically located in a New York office and a Toronto office. We had done some work in digitization. We had been making strides in digitization, but we were meeting up with lots of challenges across the world and getting all of that really synchronized into a massive amount of being able to work digitally. So it's when we talk about from digital enabled to digital core, really trying to get us to realize what it means to be digital core. Some of it was a forcing function. We went remote. We were not able to open up our Toronto offices. We did not feel comfortable opening up our New York offices. There were so many things happening. We became remote overnight almost, and we had to figure out how we were going to work in this new environment. I use the word competitive here, help ensure that WES remains competitive. And I know some of you may say, but Holly, you just called yourself a nonprofit social enterprise. What is this competition of which you speak? And what I want to explain why we say competitive is what that word really means to us. It means staying relevant. It means staying impactful. It means for us to be able to take a look at what's happening in the environments and being able to pivot this 50-year-old organization rooted in a credential evaluation product and now wanting to do way more than what we're doing currently. And so this is why we say we want to stay competitive. The landscape changes sometimes hourly at this point in time, as you all know, particularly in the areas where we are most effective in. We're seeing elections across the world, obviously here in the United States, potentially obviously in Canada next year. We're seeing the tone around the individuals that we help changing on the hour based on sound bites that we have that are going forward. And how do we stay relevant? How can we still be impactful? How can we still enable all the good work that we want to do in this environment? Some of that also comes from resources. All of that we do in terms of what we gain through the products that we have for people to purchase goes back into our social impact, goes back into the programming and the philanthropic work that we want to do, goes back into the programming we can help around the world, and particularly in the United States and Canada. So competitive may seem like an odd choice for a word for a nonprofit social enterprise, but when we talk about what we really mean about that, it's really rooted in relevancy, impactfulness. So what did we aim to accomplish? First, we were really looking at our technology. As I mentioned, we had a great homegrown proprietary system. It was 20 years old. It was built under the premise of taking a very manual process and making slightly more computer-based. It wasn't built with an eye towards where we would be in the future. It doesn't always play well with others. And so when we were trying to partner with other agencies, when we were trying to do some work with organizations that use different systems, sometimes it became very challenging for the systems to talk to one another. We talk about why it mattered. We had pushed our homegrown system to its limits. I have some colleagues in the room. There would be times where we would do a release of something new into our system a few years back. And we were really thrilled because we were under, the IT department was under our CFO, and she was always very thrilled to send out an email right away congratulating us on sending something new into the technology. And usually within an hour, we started hearing, I'm getting an error message. An email that we haven't ever used in 10 years is suddenly being sent out again. And what we found is that because of all the iterations that we did over time, because it was homegrown, because we were building upon a platform that was a little less flexible, we were pushing it to its limits. I am making sure that all my colleagues have their computers closed. We do feel it hears us from time to time, and we do not want it shutting down on our colleagues who may still be working on it back home. At the same time, because we built that software based on the processes of the old ways of which we were doing things, we were going more digital, we were having less mail coming in, we were going from 7% digital to over 70% digital receipt of work. The work of the evaluation department, the work we were doing was changing drastically, and yet our system was built off of a very regimented process. So we were looking to optimize our production processes, kind of creating those efficiencies, utilizing technology where it made sense to utilize technologies, redeploying staff into other areas, and making sure that our operating models actually mirrored what we were trying to do now and in the future, and not just be based around what the system enabled us to do. In that regard, we did redesign the entire organizational model for our business. We looked at new ways of working. We looked at new skills that were needed. We did a lot of effort, and you'll hear a little bit about it later, about upskilling our staff and really realizing and utilizing the skills that they brought to the table in addition to their skills as evaluators. And this enabled us to think beyond the credential evaluation product. It enabled us to think to what are the other areas we want to do, what are the other opportunities we want to explore, how can we enable that to work more efficiently. And finally, we wanted to build better experience for all of our stakeholders, not only internally for our staff who were continuously asking for better technology, faster ways of working, but more importantly for our customers. Our students who are coming to us, our immigrants that were looking to work, our partners who were working with us, who wanted all sorts of different items because their needs were changing. This was about building that foundation to move forward. I key in on this a little bit because, as you can imagine, 50-year organization, a little challenging to move it around from time to time. Everyone wants change, and then when change is at your doorstep, it might not be where you really want to be. And a lot of times the foundation means, like in a house, the plumbing. You know, you want to jump to staging the beautiful decorations, and where we were was we need to get the plumbing right. We need to get all of the foundations right before we are building on it and doing all the new items. That was a challenging time frame for all of our staff as we're moving from old to new. They're working in different systems. They're having to adapt and change. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. It is difficult to keep up with ever-changing customer needs if you're limited by technologies, and so that is where we were really looking to go. Before moving on to the challenges, one of the other principles that we grounded ourselves in was a little bit around I'll use a phrase from Marshall Goldsmith, his book, Personal Development Growth, you know, self-help book, what got you here won't get you there. When you think about that phrase, a 50-year organization, we've done a lot of great work. We've built a great foundation. We've talked and been able to establish trust in what we do. But now we're meeting with new entities. We're looking to go global. We're looking to do other things. So the skills of the past, the technology of the past, the operating model of the past might not be what we need to get going forward. And so that was also very much rooted in what we were doing. Joking aside, did we face some challenges? Absolutely, we faced some challenges. And what's been really kind of impressive is sitting in the different rooms this week and listening to different stories, different use cases, all saying kind of the same things, all having the same shared experiences, all having ways in which this is presented to themselves. Shifting landscapes talks both about external shifting landscapes and internal shifting landscapes. As I was mentioning, we were looking for new skills, new ways in doing work, being able to get people moving in a different direction. But the shifting landscapes externally were really very much on the top of our minds. We were looking at challenging environments for the people that we serve the most, and how do we actually help and make some changes there. It's very tough when you're making a substantive change as we were making organizationally and technologically, and seeing all these things come at us at the same time. Harnessing focus then became really a priority. If we kept trying to take everything in and respond to every external factor that was coming in, we would still be going down that road, a very long and winding road, and we would be getting nowhere. So we had to harness focus. I'll also say about the harnessing focus, I remember in Tuesday's regen session at the end, Simone's call to action was a little bit about walking in the path, understanding the factors. Don't just jump to the technology. Think about what it is you need. Harnessing focus is a big one. I will say in my role from time to time, as staff would come back from conferences and tell me about the amazing new technology that they saw as we were trying to get these technologies up, there was a point where it was a little, we need to focus. We need to think about what we're doing. We need to figure out if that is where we're going to jump to. So trying not to get dazzled by that technology and trying to really focus in on what you need to do. That technology might be great. It might be the shiny object that derails us from what we're trying to do. Comfortability with uncertainty. There's not a lot of you in this room, but I'm going to say, how many of you, if you don't mind raising your hands, have in the last few years been met with a survey that asked you something along the lines of, how comfortable are you with change? From a scale of 0 to 5, 0, I hate change, 5, I love change. I'm sure all of you have been presented with that question. And I would hazard a guess that, like our staff, most of you probably put yourselves in the 4 and 5 category. We would have a couple of staff members who were, gutsy enough to say, absolutely not, hate change. Please don't knock on my doorstep. But for the most part, everyone was in that 4 and 5 category. Let's just say that as we started to deploy different technologies, as we started to see the changes that were happening, those 4s and 5s were definitely more in the 1s and 2s categories. I think my colleagues would say in 19 years at WES, I've kind of adapted to a lot of change, and I would say that I'm a pretty adaptable individual when it comes to work, technologies, things of that nature. That being said, if I go to my favorite restaurant and I need a plate of French fries, and they've decided to change the menu, and it's only green beans, my ability to change and adapt is much more on the 0 scale. And I think that that's what's important to remember. Change is and your adaptability to it is very situational. It's situational in the moment as to what else is going on. It's situational in you might be great with change in your personal life, and change in your professional life is destabilizing. There's so many things that are happening in the world, and our staff are from all over the world, and they were dealing with not only COVID during parts of this, uncertainties with family, uncertainties with political situations. You put that all together, and comfortability with uncertainty is not something that we have the luxury of. It's something that we have to keep reminding people of and keep building the trust in. And finally, timelines. Everybody wanted it done the day after we started the project. And that's just not going to happen. And so it's all about being able to build a timeline that's going to enable you to do all the work that you need to do, keeping in mind that you can't let it go on for decades, but at the same point in time, being able to make sure people understand that it's not necessarily going to be a quick fix. We were in the CGFNS session yesterday. They were talking about the changes that they had made to their systems. I was in the program for the Flanders, and they were talking about kind of their changes and the pilots that they tried to do in the stepping back. This is the normal parts of transformation. It is why there are statistics out there that 80% of transformations may fail if you don't, think them through. Timelines is another piece of this. Be realistic with your timelines, and then what I would always say is put a bit of buffer on that, because that is going to be what actually happens. So why do I feel that I can stand up here and say we have been successful with transformation? One of the things that I will say is that transformation is ongoing. It's not just a project. It's not something that we can check a box, put it on the shelf, everything is fine. Transformation is about really changing mindsets, really changing approaches to work. And so some of the key decisions that we made throughout the process, sometimes probably made earlier would have been better, but some of the key decisions that we made included standing up a transformation management office. And what that is that is a core group of senior leaders that were meeting regularly, daily. And they were the group that was responsible for, once the staff-led initiatives of building the requirements and the asks and the wish lists and all the other items that they wanted, they were the ones that were core to saying, how are we going to prioritize this work? How are we going to make sure that we are focusing the effort in the right sequence, that we are putting together the right items at this point in time, and what should we put for a later roadmap? We were a staff-led initiative. We had at any point in time 80 to 90% of our staff across the organization participating in working groups, in information sessions, in brainstorming, in whiteboarding, you name it, we did it. We got a lot of information from them, but we also got a lot of information from our external stakeholders. We didn't just myopically look at it from our lens. We went to people who are our current customers, people who are current recipients of our evaluation reports, people who are in the social impact space, individuals that have never worked with WES. And we really wanted to listen to people outside the organization to see what it is that we can be doing differently. But at some point in time, someone has to make a decision. Someone has to say, this is the set of stuff that we are going to take forward and we're going to do. And that's where the transformation office came in. It was representative of the organization, so every department felt like they had a voice, and it was a group of individuals who were charted at focusing on making sure we were making decisions. Did we always get every decision right? Probably not. But we knew what we were deciding upon, and then we could basically make sure that the staff would feel comfortable that their voices were being heard, that our stakeholders were feeling comfortable, and that we were moving in the right direction. We blended, we have a board, a wonderful board. We blended board and staff oversight, and one of the really great keys of our board is they come from all walks of life and from all different industries. And so we actually had a task force assigned to us of specific board members, and obviously, part of their review is fiduciary. Are we tracking in terms of our spends? Are we making good decisions? Are we making good use of the resources then provided to us? But the other piece that was really key is they were individuals we could talk to and say, hey, we're dealing with this. Have you dealt with this in your organization? Do you know someone we can talk to? Is there something that you can guide us on? We met regularly, officially once a quarter. And then informally, we met as we were running into a question or a challenge. And then, of course, we had our normal annual board meetings as well. The staff oversight was key as we were getting information back, as we were getting builds back, as we were working through some changes in terms of the operating model. We were involving key staff in leadership levels and management levels, all the way down to our staff who are the individuals that will be utilizing the systems. We were listening to the voices as we went along. We committed to the concept of an MVP, a minimum viable product, and iteration. We'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but what that meant is that we were not building ourselves. We were going out and finding technologies that have their own plans because their own companies are helping to drive those items. We did a very robust search of what types of technologies WES really could utilize to get us into the future. And then we worked with them to help us get some proofs of concept, some of this minimal viable product. It's around the time that we had gotten to the point where we felt the minimal viable products of the work we were doing was when I was kind of brought into this role of Chief Transformation Officer to start the unification process, the totality of stitching everything together. That allowed us to kind of kick the tires. Is this going in the direction we want? Did we hit the right requirements? Have we forgotten something drastically? How comfortable are we feeling? Has something changed in the past 2 to 3 months from when we started this that now makes us have to change what our requirements are? Being able to do this in an iterative process helped us course correct when things weren't going the way we wanted them to be. And finally, partnerships. And in talking about the gentleman that did the presentation on Flanders, Dries and Cedric, one of the things that Dries said at the end of his presentation as they were trying to wrap up was partnerships. You can't go at it alone. And I think that was a really key item for WES to say. We had gone from building our own systems and having really impactful IT staff members who said we can build it, to pivoting that mindset to let's partner with people that this is their core business. They are going to help us push this forward. They are going to have their own roadmaps for their software that we will be able to avail ourselves of in the future instead of constantly having to try to reinvent the wheel. So for us, partnerships is key. And I'll talk a little bit about the partnership side of things in the lessons learned as well. Uh-oh. I've broken it. This is what happens with me in technology. I'm sorry. So I did want to focus this time around a little bit more on the people side. We have actually been asked some questions about the people side from those individuals who were in the sessions last year and in knowing what we were doing in terms of our transformations. And we have a very passionate staff of individuals, and we are very fortunate. And I'm not saying that because they're here, and I'm hoping that they don't, throw things at me. But I cannot state this unequivocally, the amount of the conversations that we have, the way in which we want to do work. It's a joy to be around people that are so passionate about what we do. And so I went in a little bit deeper on the people side of things because I thought that would really resonate a little bit. We talk a lot about technologies and what's the greatest ones and can we use AI and ChatGPT, but at the end of the day, people are still in the equation. And so we were looking at how do we evolve the manual processes. Those were some of the objectives. And we were fortunate to have had gained a chief of people who was coming in fresh, who was really going to help us drive some of these items, Abby Cowan. And so we were looking at it from an OD perspective. We have all of this talented individuals who, I'm gonna tell you something shocking, they did not grow up with a plan to become a credential evaluator. It was not their career choice. Most of them came with varying skills, came to us because of interest in the area, because of the tie to our mission, because of their skill sets in terms of languages and things of that nature. But what we had was, we realized a rich and diverse staff of individuals who could pivot into all sorts of different roles. 2 of them are sitting in front of me right now, who started out in the academic records and credential evaluation areas and now are thriving and driving our technology and our digitization and our efforts. And this is because of looking at competencies, looking at roles that we have. What are the roles that we have the need for now and in the future? How do we kind of rebalance the work? We had so many files coming in, so much mail coming in. We were operating massive amounts of mail and logistics areas. Those were not our key competencies. So we were able to iterate on the automations, and then it was like, well, we really need to rebalance the workforce on knowledge, on research, on areas that were going to critical thinking, on areas that we were really going to be able to drive WES forward. We wanted to start that pipeline, developing those leaders of the future who are needing to be strategic, agile, empathetic, who need to kind of encompass all those areas. And so we were looking at training and development plans. How do we get them going in that direction? We wanted succession. We wanted to have a bench of people that will be able to come and speak at conferences like this and drive WES forward in the future. And so we were looking at ways to create pathways, sometimes where it didn't even exist. And then finally, managing the perceptions. There was a lot of change. We were having changes to technology, organizational structures, focus. And so there was consistent communications and really developing that in a remote environment. And here in the offices, slightly different. But now we have people all over the United States, all over Canada, sometimes other parts of the world. And how do we make sure that everyone understands what's going on, feels like they've been communicated with? And so we were really stretching the bounds of what it meant to utilize multiple approaches to communicate. Not everyone reacts the same way to every communication channel, so we were looking at different ways. We instituted some change champions, we had some dedicated Teams channels, we had some direct individual communications, we had coaching sessions. All of these things were blending together, and it meant that we had a partner across the organization, our HR team, our OD teams, our change management teams. So finally, some lessons learned. What I would say is, and we've heard it in a lot of different sessions, is establishing why you're doing this early in the process. Early in, don't let it be driven just by technology. Don't let it be a knee-jerk reaction to an external force. Look at what are some of the things of why you are looking to change, and that will help ground the work, and you can continue to go back to that as you're met with choices that you're going to make. Guiding principles were very important to us. It was a blend. It wasn't just a technology-led project. It wasn't just a changing staff project. It wasn't just a social impact project. It was an organizational-wide project, and we had to get everyone to those grounding principles. Partnerships are key, but finding the right partnerships and consultants that will work with your internal teams is even more key. We had gone down the route when I first came to WES 19 years ago, that OCR, we were going to be able to use OCR. And we would talk to entities, and they would say things like, oh, of course we can do it. And we'd be like, well, you know, we get a lot of different transcript types. Oh, don't worry. Our software is the best. You'll be able to do it. And sure enough, they'd come in, and they'd look at what our data set was. They'd look at the 50,000 different variations of the transcripts. And most times, they would come back and say, you know what? Just make every school use this template, and you'll be fine. And so they were a partner, but they weren't the right partner for us at that point in time. And so we you know, through trial and error, through some kicking of tires, we have found partners that are willing to and want to jump into the solutioning with us, who want to be a part of it, who find this interesting and exciting and want to work. Invest in the proofs of concepts. Give yourselves times to see what you're doing. Make sure you see it, feel it, touch it, kick it. You're going to be able to then make the changes that you need to make sooner rather than later. Agility and process, all software projects right now, I can't imagine any otherwise. Want to use an agile approach, build a little bit, test it out, iterate, build a little bit more. That is great for software. It is great for IT people. It is not necessarily great for the end users, who look at the first iteration and go, wait a minute, this isn't fully baked. I don't want this. I want what is going to happen 6 iterations down the line. So that agility of thought, you have to really build in and reinforce with staff. And as I mentioned, communicating frequently with internal and external stakeholders. Don't be myopic. Don't allow one entity to either be seen as or be the one that's driving the process. It does need to be a collaborative effort, particularly when you're dealing with technologies and with people. And that has been really a key for us in terms of what we're trying to do and how we're moving forward. And I do apologize, because I'm looking at the clock, and we only have 12 seconds. It is a little bit intimidating with the countdown clock here going on. But I will say this, all of my information is, you can reach me through LinkedIn. I'm very passionate about the work that we do at WES, but also the work that we're doing in the space of transformation. I am more than happy to talk to anyone or answer any questions that people have. And I will say that about this conference, what I've been so impressed with is leaving the egos at the door, leaving the competitive nature at the door, and being able to have conversations, because there is so much that is alike in what we're doing and what we're met with in terms of challenges. Thank you. I will take any questions if you want as I'm going towards my, my area, but I will also say this, very much kismet. I'm a massive baseball fan, not of the two teams that are playing, but I will appreciate GDN scheduled this during the playoffs. And I have not checked my phone yet, but I'm hoping my New York Mets, who are playing at the same time as this presentation, may actually be winning. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of the conference.